from a Samoan perspective, our very Samoa systems are already about responsibility to place, and that's through an Indigenous lens. Life cycle practices are grounded in whanua. That's why the placenta is called whanua. When you die, you are wrapped in the siapo, which has come from whanua, returned to whanua. So everything that is significant in one's life is marked by whanua-based practice. So it's a reminder of the importance of your humility as a human being to coexist with your whanua.
A large part of my work is around defining Monanui Living System. So before we define Monanui Living System is really understanding what a living system is. A living system is an organized system, a co-organized system, but also a living system which co-evolves with its environment. However, from a Moananui perspective, it's an integrated living system of spirituality, of cultural systems, of social systems, but more importantly around how those systems are integrated into place. An example of a Monanui living system found here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, is the pā kāinga, or the pā kāinga, or papa kāinga, as different iwi and hapu know them as. So the papa kāinga that we are sitting in here today is Te Pane o Mataoho, which was a prevalent pā for the whānau of Te Waiohua, here in Mangere, Ihumātao and Pukaki. Living systems in Moananui come in all shapes and forms, but a more prevalent living system are those that are nested inside watersheds. So an example of a living system nested inside a watershed is an ahupua'a, which is prevalent in Hawaii. So what I mean by nested systems is ahupua'a is part of a larger whole. So a number of ili making up a ahupua'a, a number of ahupua'a making up a moku, and another number of moku make up a mokupuni. And each one of those nested systems are governed by their own cultural systems, their own social systems, but also how they are kaitiaki of their environments. And so, very similar to the ahupua'a in Hawaii is the papa kāinga or pā and kāinga were nested inside volcanic cones here in Aotearoa, and usually these pā were terraced and cultivated for food crops and food cultivation. They were also seasonal and temporal living systems. So during summers it was cultivated closer to the waterside, and then co-inhabitation along the volcanic cones. And then those living systems changed with the seasons. So winter, for example, was occupied differently. Another example of a Monanui living system is the Whaiala, which is the living system in Samoa. So there's a lot more recent research which has been developed by the likes of Gregory Jackman in Samoa and Albert Rafiti here in Aotearoa and across Samoa, is really trying to understand what were these prehistoric settlement patterns in Samoa. In the late 70s to the early 80s, there were an archaeological expedition in Samoa, located in the village of Wailoa in Palauni, where they surveyed around close to 1,100 acres of land there in Palauni. And during the excavation, they surfaced over 3,000 different findings. And they surfaced inhabitation or remnants of habitation, food cultivation, but also how humans settled the land close to 2,000 years ago in Samoa. Further research into the living system in Samoa, the Whaiala, is finding that the Whaiala was also a nested system. At the center of these living systems was the NUWAO, which is the village. Then there was the Pito NUWAO, which was moving towards a larger cluster of NUWAO. And then finally the Atu NUWAO, which was a cluster of Pito NUWAO. And so The Whaiala itself is an example of the nested systems and how people occupied it, not necessarily just through the relations between people, but how the human settlements cultivated the land and enabled their communities to thrive for thousands of years. Monanui peoples and Monanui environments are some of the most vulnerable people and environments across the world. And not only is that because of rising sea levels and the threats of climate change and also urbanization, but a combination of all of those things are moving towards the loss of our indigenous knowledge. And so an incredible part of this work of regenerating Monanui Living Systems is also the process of archiving our indigenous knowledge. And a really important part on the back of that is, well, how do we regenerate that indigenous knowledge in today's environment? And so there's some incredible work happening all across Monanui, and particularly here in Aotearoa, where Roy Hoskins and Ngā Aho have developed the design process of Te Aranga design principles. Amanda Yates, an associate professor at the Auckland University of Technology School of Future Environments, have developed the Modi Order Compass. And the premise of both the design principles and the Modi Order Compass is around the integration of te ao Māori into the contemporary urban environments, and any environment for that matter. And so a big part of my work is, well, how do we do that at a regional scale? So recently I just finished a doctorate, and the name of the thesis was called Moana. The Moana framework is a development and an evolution of 6 to 7 core spatial concepts and spatial frameworks from a Monanui perspective. And so some of those concepts include va, which is our relation and relationships to another. Another concept is mana, which is the authority in which people and place exert their authority across different environments. Vanua or whenua or whonua in different contexts is around understanding, well, what is our relationship as humans to the environment. Ara or ala or hala in different contexts relates to not just physical connections, but also spiritual connections between neighborhoods, environments, but also countries. Vau, which is understanding, well, if I am situated in one context, what is my relationship with the next, being from an environmental or a human perspective. And then finally, which is, I believe, a core part of the design framework, is the concept of mau. So mau is a pan-Moananui or a Moananui term which means to bind or to hold firmly onto. But also mau was a movement across Moananui which stands up for our ways of living, our indigenous knowledge and who we are. And so by integrating the concept of mau into the Mau Moana framework is really a call to action to a lot of our leaders, to a lot of our communities, designers and developers, to really not just focus on developing environments which are place-based or disconnected from their environments, but goes through a process of integrating our indigenous knowledge systems, integrating our spatial concepts and our first principles, bringing our knowledge systems to the forefront. These are not new knowledge systems. These have been an evolution of thousands and thousands of years of human settlement, of migration, of exploration. A really important part of this work is the process of framing or reframing our Monanui peoples as leaders and navigators and adapters of our environment, contextualizing our people not just as resilient, but we are regenerative. And our knowledge systems are not merely remnants of the past, but they are blueprints for the future.